Hello, I am here
Hello.
with Sierra Scott from Girl Friday. Um, what else do I say? I'll edit that.
That sounds great. I think you should leave that part in.
Okay. Um, so you're Sierra Scott from Girl Friday, right?
I am Sierra Scott of Girl Friday.
Okay. My first question. I brought this up in my review of
Ooh.
your album. Does the name Girl Friday have any connection to the Cary Grant movie from 1940? Or because I had no idea it was an expression, so I thought that it was like a reference to that movie, and I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Well, I think it kind of is. So it was Vera who came up with the name, the other guitarist, and she had been taking a film class at the time, and then I guess it was among a list of film tropes. So the movie, I guess, is based on this character of the Girl Friday, which I guess is sort of what you're talking about in terms of the movie, but it's like the person who does all the work and never gets any credit, but is kind of you know the powerhouse of the situation. So Vera just thought that was kind of a cool idea to have a band name that was about that trope, but then also the movie is way more well known than that is. So it's not it's not related, but I don't think that was the inspiration.
Would you say that you're the Girl Friday of Girl Friday?
I think we are all the Girl Fridays of Girl Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, I've recently been not very great at keeping up with emails, so shout out to everyone else in the band who's been doing them way better than I have been. A shameful Virgo, has to admit it.
So I know you guys all started in LA, but I think I read none of you are like native to LA. So where do you come from?
Exactly. Right. So I come from New York. That's where I am now.
Okay.
But yeah, I lived in LA for a minute, and now with the whole quarantine situation, I'm back home.
But, so you went to UCLA, right?
Yep.
What were you doing there before you got involved with the band?
Yeah, well, before I got involved with the band, I was wishing every day that I could be in a band. So that was a fun thing to happen. I studied musicology and music industry and technology at school. So I had a major and a minor in those two respectively. So I just basically wrote a lot of papers about My Chemical Romance and stuff. That's what my thesis was on.
So what was like the original thing that sort of got you wanting to be in a band?
I mean, I've already mentioned My Chemical Romance once. We might as well just go with it. I saw when I was a kid, I watched a ton of the VH1 music videos on the weekends. My mom and I would always watch them, and that's one of my earliest memories of really liking a song that I hadn't heard through my family. It was a music video for Helena by My Chemical Romance, and I thought they were so cool, and they had the cool makeup, and they were super dramatic, and the song was amazing, and I just became completely obsessed. And I think that honestly, since I was probably 6 or 7, that's just been what I wanted to do. So then I just pretty much spent my whole life quietly waiting instead of actually searching it out, but it seems to have worked out okay. So.
Mm-hmm. So what drew you to the guitar specifically?
One of my older brothers is an insane musician. He has a really, really good work ethic and is just always practicing, and he's been playing so many instruments since I was a kid. And he had a guitar teacher, and he was a guitar and piano teacher when he was a kid. And at one point he asked me if I wanted to start taking guitar lessons, I think after my brother had gone to college. And yeah, I just thought, I don't know. I don't really know. I actually wanted to play the bass originally. I thought it would be really cool to be a bass player. And, I bet my brother said that if I learned the guitar, then I could also I could pretty much play bass. I mean, not well, but if you learn the guitar, then there are more avenues open to you from there than if you just learn bass. So I think that was why I started.
Cool. Oh yeah, so I'm sort of a booky person, in case you can't tell. So I was just curious if there were like any writers or authors or poets or whatever that sort of like inspired you, like in your writing and stuff like that.
I love that question. Yeah, I mean, I think among the four of us, I think we tend to read pretty different things. I can only really speak for myself in terms of what I like. One of our songs, the title of Eaten Thing, was actually taken from a book that I was reading by Jean Genet, which is called Our Lady of the Flowers. And there was this line that I was just I tend to underline stuff in books, not that mean anything, but that are just really beautifully written or whatever. And I had underlined this bit that I could not stop thinking about for a really long time it was this whole bit about how one of the characters wanted to be this eaten thing that would never again be spit forth from the earth or something. And I just thought that is so cool. So that was one of the inspirations there. Another one of the songs, I took the title of the Jack Kerouac, William Burroughs book. And what is it? The title is slightly different than I think.
And the hippos were boiled in their tanks. Okay. Yeah, I mentioned that also in my review because I was like, that can't be from anywhere else.
Yeah, no, too weird of a phrase for me to have just come up with that on my own. And then recently, I've been reading a ton of Evil and Wa, which has been really fun. Like I just finished Vile Bodies, and it's just very fun satire of life in like the early 20th century, and it's just really funny. Right now I'm reading Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which is really fantastic. And I feel like whatever. Anyway, books, love them. Books are good.
So it sounds like it sounds like there's like an interest in like 20th century literature. Where does that like come from for you?
Yeah, well, one of my I had two favorite professors in college, and one of my favorite professors, his name is Mitchell Morris, and he specializes in a lot of things, but he does a lot of queer musicology stuff. And I did a private what is it called? An independent study with him, which was basically just me hanging out in his office and chatting with him and pretending that there was some bigger project at play, but there wasn't. And I think he kind of realized that I was really into bands like Nine Inch Nails and stuff. And so he kind of took me on this rabbit hole back from inspirations on inspirations on inspirations. That's just kind of it's a lot of like the grotesque and exploring like a lot of Georges Bataille and stuff. So very like the pineal eye and stuff like that. That's just kind of exploring kind of quote unquote disgusting things and how they can be beautiful or how they kind of make us human. And I just got really into that, which kind of led me not all of them are super related, but I feel like that's kind of the core of what I want to read about. I'm so into super flowery language. I don't really like the simplicity of words. I think it's really cool when people can do that, but I've never really been very good at it. So I just kind of like to read super opulent writing. That's kind of gross.
Because I read it in another interview.
I appreciate it.
You mentioned that you're very interested in sort of writing about like viscera and like bodies and stuff. I thought that was very interesting.
I don't really know. It's not. I can't decide if it's intentional. It ends up happening every time anyway, whether I try to or not. So I figure I'm just gonna lean in now.
Because I was listening to some of the stuff from before the album, and there was the Tropic of Cancer song. So I thought that maybe you guys were like sort of a bookie band.
Yeah, I think I would. It seems that way, doesn't it? I don't know. We tend to. I just think it's one of those things where, at least for me, I always try to sort of emulate in a hopefully respectful way things that I like to read because, eventually, as much as you don't want to copy anyone, it's very much like if I'm really inspired by the way someone writes, I think that's just going to come out. And sometimes it's kind of fun to pay a little tribute to it by putting bits and pieces into your own stuff.
Yeah. So like this interest in writing, does that show up like, do you have any like interest in that outside of your music? Or is it like you just write and then you kind of bring it in? Or is it, I've always loved writing. It was, I think it's really, really fun. I enjoy doing it in all forms. I have a lot of unpublished papers from school that I'm now starting to finally begin thinking about publishing. Mm-hmm. It's just I tended to write a lot about just bands that I really liked and sort of talking about maybe why I liked them or kind of what I was talking about earlier, who had inspired them in the past to do what they'd done. So I have a ton of papers on like Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, My Chemical Romance, Placebo. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of feel like that would be fun to try to publish some kind of weird
musicology thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, I would love to, I don't know, I write all the time. I try to write every day, so there are only only some percentage of that can be turned into songs, and then only some percentage of those are good. So, hopefully there will be, I'm trying to do other stuff with it as well, but being a little lazy at the moment.
And so with writing, because I know like all four of you, or like you say like all four of you like contribute to like the song. Does that ever like present any challenges? Because I feel like if I had to like write music with 3 other of my friends, it would just be a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's kind of cool and about the way we all write together is that I think we kind of get each other's styles at this point. Like obviously we're, evolving and whatnot, but I feel like I can't really remember a time when someone has brought something forward and everyone was like, that's disgusting, I hate it. So I feel like we kind of each we carve out some time in them, and as much as a lot of it is super, super collaborative where someone will change a word or someone will say, oh, it sounds better if you do this. I feel like in a general sense, we do tend to sort of split it into little sections, and we each sort of it doesn't happen on purpose, but I think we end up having our own little spaces within the song that then, as part of the greater picture, become more of a collaborative thing. Mm-hmm. So it's actually, so far, not super horrible. We have our moments for sure, but as it works pretty well, I would say. Lucky us.
And so like when you guys like switch off vocals, like do you guys like each write your own, or do you ever like write with someone else's voice in mind, or is it always you sing whatever you write?
I haven't ever consciously written with someone else's voice in mind, but I also don't even know if I write with my voice in mind necessarily. I mean, I really like it when people sing what they've written. Personally, I think that it's very, very Beatles or whatever, not comparing us to the Beatles, but like as a Beatles fan or whatever, I like being able to hear that, oh, John's singing this bit, what, he wrote that. I wonder what that means to him specifically. It's just kind of fun for me to dissect all that stuff. So I think generally we do that, where if it's one person singing, generally it's that person who wrote it. Although me saying don't quote me on that in a recorded interview, but generally I would say that's true. But then there are a bunch of things that we all sing together that one person has written or we've all written. So there are definitely exceptions to that, but I think it's fun to do that.
Yeah. And so I know you guys were on tour before you recorded the album. So was the album like written before that tour, or was it like you were developing it on the course of that tour?
We are really horrible with time management. So we knew that we were supposed to have the album ready. I think originally it was by last August. We were supposed to have it done. And we had left ourselves like a week to write 3 or 4 full songs because we only had 6 or 7. We wrote a lot of the album before we went on tour. But then we had to sort of scramble at the end to write a couple more. And then some of those were either ones that each of us had written sort of separately and then brought forward to everyone else and said, oh, do you think this will fit? How can we all add to this and make it a collective thing? And then some of them, a couple were written on tour, I'm pretty sure, or maybe right after. I know that This Is Not the Indie Rock I Signed Up For was written during or maybe or after the last tour we went on with Marika Hackman.
Like it would be, because there's the casinos and the boy named Cheddar.
Yep.
Is that Chuck E. Cheese? Or is that not?
I think that Libby heard someone in a gas station screaming for her son Cheddar. Like Cheddar was misbehaving and she was like, Cheddar. I think she was yelling at him to stop doing something, which I think is really funny. So
and so is that the first tour that you had been on with like a band?
We went on a tour a couple months before that with the Beths, which was really, really fun. So that was July and August of 2019. And then we went starting in, I think, October on tour with Marika Hackman. So back to back bangers.
And so where did you happen to come to Texas Any fun?
We haven't.
Memories? No.
We have not been. No, we were really excited because we were gonna play South by. Was it this year? It must have been. Yeah, this year.
Yeah, I remember the day it got canceled.
Yeah, and so we were super excited. We had actually set sail in Virginia, the drummer's little teeny tiny hatchback with all of our gear, and we were gearing up to go on this tour to get us to South by and then back. So we played one show in Phoenix, and it was kind of when people started to be like, maybe there's a global pandemic, not sure. So we kind of hit the road and we're feeling it out. We played one show and then we had to turn around and go home. So my fond memory of Texas is that I never got to go, but I really wanted to.
Okay. And so was the last time you all played together, was that at the quarantine cabin thing that's on YouTube?
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah. Because since then, because Vera went back to New Zealand pretty quickly after that. And then, yeah, have not been together. And I feel like it must be super weird to try to practice over Zoom. So we have not ventured into that territory.
Tried that.
Yeah, we're not even very good at practicing when we're in the same room together. So I can't even imagine how we could organize over Zoom.
One thing I was curious about was the Amber's Knees video. Because I saw that like Virginia animated that. And I was like,
yeah.
What was the process of that?
Well, I wish I could steal Virginia's brain for a second and explain to you what actually went down, but I can tell you how it went from my perspective, which was, so we got really into watching Rock of Love on, I think it must have been right before the Beth's tour, so a little more like a year and a half ago. And
what exactly is Rock of Love?
Oh, Rock of Love is Bret Michaels, the frontman of Poison, the 80s hair metal band. He had a dating show I think 2007 probably. Maybe, I don't know. I could be dating that wrong. But it is basically, it's like Flavor of Love, but it's Rock of Love. And it's so horrible. Like, it is the most horrible thing to watch. But it's so amazing. Like, going into it knowing that it's going to be terrible and everything everyone says is going to be probably racist or like really, really not good at all.
Yeah.
It is just the craziest thing to see. And I never watched it as a kid. I had seen previews of it and stuff, and I knew that it existed, but I was not in that sphere. But it is just truly amazing. He does crazy things. Like, he makes all these women dress up in bikinis and then play football in mud that he's created in his backyard. And he calls it it's every season they have it. It's called the Mud Bowl. And so we just got really into watching Rock of Love and decided that we all needed to dress up as Bret Michaels for a music video.
And so would you say that this show is for you, like, are you more a fan of Rock of Love than Flavor Flav's Flavor of Love?
I would say so, because now I'm more acquainted with it. I think I had seen a little bit more back in the day of Flavor of Love.
I couldn't get past the first episode.
That is exactly what Rock of Love. It's just the same. They're both just completely insane, but the contestants are so funny. And it's just amazing too, because there are 3 seasons, but it's supposed to be billed as him finding his soulmate forever. Yeah. So like watching it, knowing there are 2 more seasons after the first one, and he finds the love of his life after season 1, and you just know that it's not true because he kept trying. It's great. I recommend it, even though, things from that time. It's crazy how quickly things become not acceptable at all. I mean, obviously they weren't at the time, but like people seem to think it was fine on MTV or being fun. Anyway.
And so did that influence your songwriting for the record?
I mean, how could it not? Well, it influenced the song title for sure. Yes, Poison is our biggest inspiration. I gotta say though, I did play back in the day, I can't remember if it was Rock Band or Guitar Hero, but there was a Poison song on one of those, and I loved to play it. So, I do cite Bret Michaels as an inspiration.
And how many takes did like the dancing for that video take?
Actually, surprisingly, not that many. I think the hardest thing was to keep a straight face. Mm-hmm. I remember because there was one where we all, I think Vera had this idea, maybe, I could be wrong, but we were all supposed to get on the ground and crawl towards the camera. And I am just a notorious laugher. I cannot keep a straight face under any circumstances. So I kept having to look down and try to be super somber as I was crawling on the ground dressed as Bret Michaels covered in fake tattoos. It was just completely insane, but it was really fun.
And so going back to Flavor Flav, are there any sort of like non-rock artists that have influenced how you think about music or your approach to music?
I'm sure. Of course, now I can't think of a single band at all. Let's see. Well, I don't know. I mean, for me, I think I have, it could be a good quality, it could be a bad one, depending on however anyone feels about this. I'm just I don't think I have a very good breadth of musical knowledge. Like I basically like bands and then know everything about them, but it's like 4 bands. So I don't think I'm the greatest person to talk to about that. I mean, I actually really like, unpopular opinion, I do like country music, not necessarily like stadium country, what people are bumping to in their pickup trucks and stuff. But I don't know. I like the way that a lot of country singers sing. I think it's very very emotive. So I would say that, I mean, I love Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that kind of thing for me, I'm really into just the sadness of it. I mean, my brother, again, has gotten me recently back into Gorillaz in a very big way. Mm-hmm. So that could be, I don't know if I couldn't really name a lot of people that consciously, I think I might have said that wrong. Anyway, the kind of the way I write, but I think lyrically things tend to inspire me more, which comes from just all sorts of stuff like books and, whatever. Anyway, I don't know if that really answered the question.
So you wouldn't call yourself a country personality, but you like a few country artists?
Sadly, I don't think I would, but I don't know. I think sometimes it gets a bit of a bad rap, but there is a lot of white supremacy involved, which I cannot get behind. So just depends on, what kind of country we're talking about.
Yeah. So you were part of the band for the Fashion Con Man EP. Mm-hmm. I guess that's an EP. Did your sort of like input in terms of songwriting change from that EP to Mary? Did you find yourself sort of contributing more?
Yeah, well, let's see. Fashion Con Man, I think I was more comfortable contributing by the time we wrote a lot of the songs on Androgynous Mary. Mm-hmm. I personally just had to get over some hurdles at the beginning joining the band of no one was putting this on me, but I was just very like, I'm so scared. I was convinced I think probably everyone in the band had to convince me for a really long time always to turn my guitar up more on stage, like turn my amp up, because I was convinced I couldn't play guitar and I didn't want anyone to hear me, so I would turn it really low and just nervously. And I think that was sort of the same thing with contributing to songs. I mean, I always knew that I really wanted to do it, and I had written all this stuff, and I just really love singing, so I wanted to do it. But I think at the beginning I wasn't quite sure how to insert myself, but now I think we have a much better, I've gotten over that a bit, so I felt more comfortable. But we contributed as a whole pretty well to Fashion Con Man, but not as much, I don't think.
Libby mentioned this in a previous interview about her sort of vision about the album being a sort of a subversive notion of expanding holiness outside of traditional Western patriarchal senses. Yeah. Is that something that was like a guiding philosophy for all of you, or is that more of just something that she did?
I mean, I don't know. I would say it was pretty, I would say among the 4 of us, that was a pretty big thing. I don't know if we ever really talked about it too much. Mm-hmm. I think that was sort of more, at least for me, looking back on it, is sort of what I was figuring. And I also think that sort of what I was talking about earlier with all this stuff about, I don't know, how I write a lot about bodies and things that are kind of grotesque or whatever. I think that for me sort of falls into the same category of just writing about things that maybe are supposed to be unacceptable, or I don't know, or just not things that anyone really wants to hear about. I really like the idea of writing about those things and talking about them. So I don't know how much I was consciously thinking about it being about holiness in general, but I think there is something really cool to be found in making unholy things holy, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't really ever know how conscious a lot of that is, but it's always something I'm really interested in.
Yeah. So are you guys in the process of writing new material right now? I think you said you were sort of not writing much anymore. Or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a collective, we're not really right now, just because at least I'm personally finding it really hard to do that while we're not together. And it's just, I mean, I don't know if it's a very weird time. I don't know if anyone else has said that. No. So I'm definitely, I mean, I would imagine that we're all sort of writing in our own little ways. And I think we're all sort of writing our own little things right now, but we haven't really been collaborating too much just because it feels kind of weird, at least for me, over the internet. Like, I don't know, it doesn't feel great right now, but you know.
Are you finding it hard to like stay sane? It's like I'm having a hard time. I'm buckling.
It's crazy. I mean, I just don't really know what to do, because it's like things are getting a little terrifying out there, but I have a really hard time knowing anything about the news, because it's just like everything is crazy. Everything just keeps getting crazier, and it's like this, you know, constant battle for me between being at all informed about anything and then just completely retreating into just not actually paying attention to anything outside, which, you know, is obviously not okay to do all the time, as people are, you know, things are not great. So, you know, it's a struggle to remain sane, but you know, we're dealing with it day by day, trying to just you know, make things happen in a good way, you know. I'm gonna try to do be an election inspector for the election, which is I'm excited to work those polls. Which will be cool, hopefully. Yeah, it's okay. It's terrifying. I don't really know.
In the public bodies video, it seems that you're sort of getting into plant care. Is that like a new hobby that's developing for you, or is that just something that was in the video?
In fact, there's my beautiful plant right there. Oh no! As soon as I show you my plant, the Wi-Fi cuts out.
Yeah.
Okay, there's my plant.
Yeah.
I am trying to get really into it. I only have my one pride and joy right now, because after I moved from LA, I had to give my other plants away. So Virginia has a couple of my plants now, and I think she's the only one who took some. But I'm in the process. So this is my mom's house, and I have never actually had a proper bedroom here. So I'm currently in the midst of making it actually my room. And so once I do that, I'm going to get a ton of plants and try to be good at taking care of them, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
One thing I was curious about was who was on the cover of the album?
What
sort of significance did you sort of see in that?
Yeah, well, so when we were talking about the album cover a long time ago, we were thinking about, we had a big document of album covers that we really love, just to see if there's any kind of common thread or what we could do. And we sort of decided that we wanted it to be a photo, because a lot of our favorite album covers are photos of people. Like the cover of Live Through This by Hole is such a good photo where she's clutching the flowers and crying. There were just a lot of really beautiful album covers that had just portraits of people. So we were talking about that and what we could do about it. And we wanted it to be someone who you know, in some way was like genderqueer or something like that. And then Vera brought up as well that she had not seen a ton of album covers of people who weren't, you know, super young and stereotypically like youthful, glowing, you know, that whole thing. And so Vera was one who brought that up and said it would be really cool to see an older person on an album cover and to have this like beautiful image of that. And so we ended up, I think through Hardly Art, we found a photographer. I think they sort of knew him. And then he had a friend named Helena who was super down. And so her name is Helena Rogers, and she's really cool. And she used to be in a punk band. She's an artist, and it just felt really great. And then we all they took a bunch of photos at this really beautiful, I don't know if it was a park or like kind of a lake area in Washington, I think. And that was the one that we all thought, nice album cover, found it.
Because it was different, because I guess you don't really see that many sort of like older people.
Yeah. I know. Well, when Vera said that, it felt really good. It felt like it clicked, and we thought, okay, this is something we can definitely do. That seems like it would be really beautiful. So yeah, let's do it.
So you mentioned Hole just now, and on your Bandcamp page, you mentioned Hole and Placebo and Sonic as sort of like influences. Is there like any other bands who were sort of like very formative on sort of all you guys as a whole?
We actually don't have that much overlap. Because even those ones mentioned, I think Hole is the only one, maybe I could be wrong, that we all were really, really into. Because I don't know a ton about Sonic Youth. I know some of their songs, but I'm not diehard, but I know that Vera and Libby really love them. And I know Virginia really loves Sleater Kinney, but I'm not super into Sleater Kinney. We have a lot that we kind of can all agree were important and formative in general, but I don't think as a unit we actually have a ton of favorite artists as a whole. TM. But I don't know. I think that's kind of fun. It's kind of nice that we all have sort of different, you know, inspirations and, you know, what have you.
Because I think on there, in some sort of like reviews, they bring up like this, like the 70s post-punk influence. So I was wondering if that was like, I guess given the stuff that you've talked about, that might not be like a thing for you, but if that was like sort of a conscious thing.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I could be wrong about this. I think that Vera would be able to more passionately talk to you about that. Yeah, I don't know. I just got really into like, I feel like mid-late 90s stuff, like industrial and all that for me was kind of fun because I have 3 older siblings, and also my parents are obviously older than all of us. And so it was this kind of thing where it felt like the 90s I sort of missed. It's like it was too early for my siblings to fully be people yet when it was happening, but my parents were too past it to care when 90s music was happening. So I kind of fell into that as like, ooh, this is my little my little niche. But yeah, I mean, I think that what's funny is that you can then take a lot of those bands and then bring it back to 70s post-punk stuff as things that they were listening to. So it's all a lineage.
Yeah. One thing I noticed I in some of like the live videos on YouTube, it seemed that for the closer, the I Hope Jason Is Happy, that you were playing in like an open tuning. Is that something you do a lot as a guitarist? Or is it mostly just in standard that you say?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly play in standard. I'm beginning to think about branching out, but we'll see. Vera does a lot of cool tunings. So Vera had written that guitar part, or both of the ones that happened, I think, in that. And so it was a matter of, we wanted more oomph to it, and so we decided that I would also play that. But yeah, new horizons for me. I stick to my standard tuning like it's gonna save me, but when I have played in more open tunings, I think it's really fun. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to do that more, but it does not come naturally to me. I will say that.
And so has your style changed a lot since you've like been in the band? Do you feel like it's sort of like under any big changes?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I just have gotten way more confident about being able to play at all, which has been, I think, the biggest thing, just because you kind of just have to believe that you can play, and then your mind will trick you, and then you'll play. So that's been cool. Yeah, I just feel like I've discovered that I tend to really like really screechy, really screechy high guitar parts, which I think is fun, which sort of came out later. I didn't really know that was a thing that I enjoyed, so that was fun to discover about what I like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how concretely. I don't really know what I could say has changed. I mean, again, the biggest thing is just that I actually believe that I can play guitar now, which is a thrill.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Were there any moments on Mary that you wrote that you were like particularly proud of? You were like, yes, I did that.
Clotting was a big thing for me, because at least for me, it sort of felt like I had finally I believed in my songs enough to be able to bring that forward. Because again, no one is ever rude about about that happening. So it's not like I'm living under this tyranny of people telling me I can't submit my songs.
Do you sing on that song, or is that okay?
And I had written it a while back, and I was so nervous to bring it forward, because every other time it was sort of we'd all be in a room together, and then we would sort of create parts for ourselves, or maybe I would write it in the car on the way to practice or whatever. But that was kind of something that I had been hoarding for a while, and so to have it on the album and then to have everyone also add insanely good parts to it was really fun. And also I had to restructure it, and I rewrote the bridge. It was just fun to get everyone's input on it and to change it around and finally do it. So that's a big moment. Pride for me.
Nice. Okay. And so were there any other ones that you like started? Because I'm not sure like who wrote or who like came up with the ideas for which songs, you know.
Right. I mean, I think generally it's pretty muddled. Like, people come in with, someone will have a riff and then someone will have some lyrics, and then, it's usually not super cut and dry like that. But there are a couple that each of us individually brought forward and had written most of. But we like to think of them all as collaborative in general, just because no one ever writes all of the parts and says, okay, you're playing this and you're playing this and this is my song, so go away. It's very, even if someone has written the lyrics or the melody or whatever, everyone does contribute their parts. And so we like to think of them as all of our equal children.
Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at you guys' Twitter page. I noticed that someone had retweeted one of those gripping food with force memes.
Oh yeah.
that was you. If that's a passion that you guys share as a band.
It's funny. I wish it were a band-wide passion. I just saw those the other day too, because I don't remember why. I rarely go on our Twitter. I think it's mostly Libby who tweets, but we all have access to it, so I'm sure there are some sprinkled in. But I thought that was so funny too. I was also an audience member for that meme, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I was wondering if you had any favorite memes of the gripping food with force, or if you had one food that you would like to grip with force.
Oh wow. What would I like to grip with? I can't say I have. I'm not familiar enough with the gripping food with force memes, but I did think the ones that we retweeted were very, very funny. I feel like anything. Oh, gripping Jello with force would be pretty funny. I would enjoy that. There's this YouTube video that Virginia and I watch fairly often with her roommates, which is, we found it one night. I honestly don't remember why we got there, but we got to this video that's called It's Chili Dog Time, and it's this person dressed as Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's really terrifying, aggressively eating a chili dog, and it is like the scariest thing I've ever seen. And it's kind of the same energy to me of gripping a chili dog with force. So maybe that, but make it vegan, I guess.
Oh, and one other thing I was curious about was the goth wiggles thing. Where does that come from?
I think it was, we like to, with every show we play, we tend to coordinate beforehand at least to an extent, what we're going to wear. And sometimes we go for monochrome, everyone gets a color, and you have to just run with that. And so I think we played a house show at UCLA a couple of years ago, and I think we had sort of done that where we were all in a different color. And there was I don't remember if this was the origin of it, but there was a photo that someone took. It might have been our friend Megan, but I don't know. Of I think me and Vera playing, and I was wearing blue and Vera was wearing orange, and we captioned it Goth Wiggles because it just kind of felt like that was true. Where it's, you know, generally pretty wholesome, but maybe also a little terrifying.
Yeah. And so you mentioned house shows. Did you guys start out with sort of just playing house shows? Like when you came in, is that mostly?
Yeah. It was a lot of just playing in people's backyards at like midnight and then getting the cops called 20 minutes later, which was insane, of course, because the frats down the street could do whatever they wanted and no one ever shut them down. So, but yeah, a lot of house shows, a lot of really small spaces with a lot of people very drunk. Yeah, it was good. Good vibes.
So how long did it take to sort of go from house shows to sort of playing like bigger venues for you guys?
That's a good question. I mean, not as long as, it didn't feel very long to me. I mean, I wish I could remember the first show that we played. We played a lot of random places kind of in Orange County and stuff, and then we started to get, there's this one notorious show in our book where we played someone's birthday party at this kind of sketchy apartment in the middle of LA, and then it was completely insane. The whole place smelled like feet. They tried to charge us $1 for a water bottle even though we were playing, I'm pretty sure, for free. Yeah. Then we ended up losing our merch, which was in a trash bag, and then they had been wearing it for a long time and didn't give it back. And then someone was constructing the building as we were playing. Like someone was in front of us with screwdrivers, and we told them we needed 4 mics, but then they only had 1, and then someone just held it. It was completely insane. But then when we left that show, we all were like, okay, well, so by the way, which one of us knows the person whose birthday was? And then nobody did. We all just assumed someone else knew the person who was having a birthday party, and it was a complete stranger. So it was shows like that for a minute too, which was hilarious. And then, yeah, I don't know, maybe a year.
Yeah.
I could be completely mistaking the timeline, but.
And so doing shows like that, were there ever any moments where you were like, this is not for me?
No, not at all. It's so funny. I mean, it felt so, it's like everything that happened was just hilarious. As much as at the time, it was kind of like, okay, so this is a little weird that we told them what gear we would need beforehand, and they said, yep, 4 mics, got it. Just kidding, you get 1 and no mic stand. It still is just, I mean, I'm so glad that happened. It is the funniest thing to look back on now. Mm-hmm. So I never really had a thought that it wasn't. I enjoy even the bad parts, but I don't know if that's a weird thing, but it's fun.
And so when you joined the band, this was like the first band you had ever been in, right?
Pretty much. My brother and I would play together. We still do. And I had sort of been in a band with 3 of my friends from college, but we pretty much had 2 practices where we maybe played an Arctic Monkeys song halfway decently and then ended up just watching YouTube videos for the rest of it. So that I wouldn't consider super real, although it was going to be a fantastic project if we finally got that Avril Lavigne cover in the bag, but we never did. So yeah, this was the first legitimate experience I had, except for playing with my brother.
And so I noticed that in some of the songs there's like a lot of like very nice vocal harmonies that I feel like sort of made it like very unique. Did it take a while to sort of like get that dynamic down?
I mean, actually, well, yeah, because I remember we had a show. I think it was at this DIY venue in LA. It's called Non Plus Ultra, and someone had recorded it, the whole set. I think maybe the venue did. I don't remember, but we were given the footage, and I could not listen to it because I was afraid. I'm not afraid to admit that I was ashamed of the performance, but I remember everyone else listened to it, and we had a very serious talk about, okay, we're going to need to practice the way we sound singing together more now, because now that we're playing slightly better venues and people can actually hear us, that's a problem. So, it took us, I wouldn't say it was a horribly strenuous task, but we had to face the fact that we were not doing a great job before we started saying, maybe we should warm up or something before we sing.
I've had a similar feeling. It's completely different, but I was with like a friend of a friend at like a show, and they like were recording part of it, and all that you could hear was just me screaming, singing along, and it was the worst thing I've ever heard.
That's so good. Yeah. Did you play anything or just screaming away?
I was screaming.
Perfect.
I was in the front row.
I love that. I had the same thing once where I think I sent one of my friends. I must have been at some show, and I meant to send them just footage of like the person I was seeing playing, and all you could hear was me so loudly singing along. And I don't think I sent it because of that. I was completely mortified that you couldn't even hear the person I was there to see.
And so when you were young, did you like go to a lot of shows, and did that sort of be like, oh yeah, I want to do that sort of type thing, or?
Yes, I was so, I mean, because I grew up like 45 minutes north of Manhattan, so it's a pretty quick train ride to get in there and then see shows. And I went pretty often. I saw a lot of like emo bands at the time. I was really into this Australian band called Tonight Alive, and I saw Panic at the Disco a bunch, and like that whole crowd. And every single time after it was over, I was just so sad because I wasn't also doing it. It was a combination of being super inspired and also upset that I couldn't do it. But yeah, very good stuff.
Mm-hmm. If you had a radio show on KVRX, what would you call it?
Oh God, it would have to be something related to astrology or something. It would have to be, oh man. Well, actually, you know what? This doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean anything to anyone, but I still think it's funny. When I was younger, for some reason, got this phrase stuck in my head, and I couldn't get it out, and it was just a lemon lime catastrophe. But it has nothing to do with anything, but I think that's what I would call it. So scratch the astrology bit. It's all about this phrase I came up with when I was 15 or whatever. And then I would turn that into making it become something. So if you want to hire me, I have clearly a very well-fleshed idea. So.
Yeah. I noticed you played in like, I think like the UCLA radio like a long time ago. Yeah. Have you had any other like college radio experiences that were like?
Yeah, we've had a couple that were terrible, you said?
Yeah. Have there ever been like any like bad ones?
I think we've been pretty well. We did play KXLU a couple years ago, and I'm pretty sure we did not play well, but it was a really fun time. Like I'm sure no one wants to hear the actual set that we played, but I think we had a good time there. So it wasn't a bad experience per se, but we didn't do a great job. And I think we maybe forgot an amp or something, like some horrible technical difficulty that everyone had to fix for us because we were being incompetent. So that was good. Have a lot of that.
Okay, well, I think this has been a good talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been great. Beautiful first interview. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that'll do it for the interview.
Cool.
Sierra Scott from Girl Friday, Androgynous Mary, out on all streaming platforms. Most.
Oh yeah. Yep. All the ones.
Available on vinyl and cassette and CD. I think on your Bandcamp. It's a good album. I reviewed it for KVRX.
Thank you so much.